No matter what hour your clock strikes, here it's always Halloween, and I'm always your haunted host, Luce Tomlin Brenner. Welcome to Small Frights Friday. On these very special episodes, I like to share a curated selection of calls from the All Hallows Hotline and letters from the eeeekmail mailbag. If you have a Halloween memory, recommendation, or query that you'd like to share, you can call us at 802-532-DEAD or write to us at itsalwayshalloweenpodcast@gmail.com. Well, we've got loads of new lanterns out there listening in Halloween land. Welcome, you lovely souls. It's terrifyingly terrific to have you. If you are new to the podcast, I do encourage you to start listening from the beginning, especially our history episodes, as each episode of It's Always Halloween builds on each other. We do 4 different types of episodes here. We do the Small Frights, the history episodes, ghost story episodes, and then occasionally I will have an interview subject on as well. And then if you subscribe on Patreon, you'll get 2 bonus ghost story episodes a month. Speaking of Patreon, this show is made possible by the frighteningly wonderful Patreon Ghoul Gang, whose subscriptions fully produce It's Always Halloween and keep us independent, ad-free, and sustainable. Our Ghoul Gang also made it possible for us to take the last 2 months off from new podcast episodes so that we could prep for Midsummer Scream and our Halloween collaboration with Displaced Snail. During this spooky sabbatical, we gained gobs of new ghouls who I am thrilled to welcome into the gang. You came in at the perfect time. As calendar Halloween looms, I've been conjuring up lots of spooky extras to set the mood. Let's all give a warm, witchy welcome to our newest Ghoul Gang members. Hello, and thank you for joining Jose, Christian, Mackenzie, Rebecca, Alicia, Katie, Gabe, Ava, Connor, Cassandra, Chuck, Nick, Heather, Jay, Cassie, Black Cat Candy Corn, Rose, and Stable Girl. Thank you so much for coming in the last couple of months, even while the podcast was on a hiatus. The influx of new patrons was such a huge help during this wild and crazy summer that Pete, Nathan, and I had trying to get everything coordinated for the biggest event It's Always Halloween has ever gotten to participate in. My brain is still spinning and filled with little ghosts from that incredible weekend. It might take me a few more weeks to settle down, at which point I hope to tell you a little bit more about it. But I still just feel like I'm on cloud 9. Or maybe that I've taken too much of Love Potion number 9, a song that is not quite Halloween-y, and yet my hometown amusement park, Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, would always have it on their Halloweekends playlist. Why do I remember this? Because it was a very short playlist during the aughts when I would regularly attend Halloweekends with my best friend and Ghoul Gang member, Laura Zaustowski. And they had played only about 20 songs on loop. So if you were there all day, they really wormed your way in there. But the only 2 I can remember was Love Potion number 9 and Werewolves of London. Imagine hearing that 20 times a day. Yes, it was heaven. That's what I'm saying. It was perfect. To summarize, thank you, Ghoul Gang, for supporting It's Always Halloween. And if there's any lanterns out there in Halloween land who would like to join them and help produce the podcast every week and get some extra Halloween thrills and chills each month, please go to patreon.com/itsalwayshalloween or click the link in our show notes. There are 2 new Halloween-themed short stories by R.L. Stine, read by me with original sound design by Pete, up on the Patreon now. And our next movie party event is this Saturday, August 13th, starting at 5:30 Pacific Standard Time. That's tomorrow if you're listening on the day the podcast comes out. It's not too late to sign up and join us. You get movie party benefits at our $10 a month and $16 a month levels. And don't forget, you can sign up for Patreon annually. And if you do so, you get 2 months for free. So for $100 a year, you can get tons of spooky movies all year round. I screen at least 2 films a month, and I will definitely be screening more in September and October. Sometimes the Ghoul Gang picks what they want to see, and sometimes I pick, but the films always fit a monthly theme. The picks range from cozy to slightly gruesome and span cinema history. Each movie party includes a video intro from me where I dive into cinema history, film analysis, and of course, those important Halloween connections. Plus, you can enjoy the live chat room to discuss and joke throughout the film with your fellow Ghoul Gang members. It's a great way to get to know your fellow listeners and spend a little quality time with me. My academic background is in film history and analysis, and I've worked at video stores for half my life, so I'd like to think I'm offering you a fun-sized, spooky film school. Way better than watching whatever an algorithm picks out for you. And this month, I'm trying something new. I will now be kicking off each movie party with a specially curated 30-minute pre-roll show made up of videos that fit the evening's theme. I will be sharing these playlists after the screenings in my recommended reading posts, which are available to everyone at the $6 and up levels. So even if you cannot make movie nights, you can still have access to all of my research and fascinating information about the films if you sign up for that $6 tier, which also qualifies you for our book club. This month, we're reading Ghost Summer, a collection of short stories by Tananarive Due. So come to Jaws this Saturday, and if you're not too scared of the water after that, mark your calendars for August 27th and join us for Crawl, an alligator hurricane survival film, Saturday, August 27th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And in September, we'll be celebrating the birth of the master of horror himself, Stephen King, and we'll be reading his first novel, Carrie, as well as watching several Carrie adaptations and many of his other classic films. So head on over to patreon.com/itsalwayshalloween or click the Patreon link in our show notes to join our community Discord, our Kitchen Witch Recipe Club, our book club, our movie parties, and to get those bonus ghost story episodes. Most importantly, you'll get that delicious joy knowing that you are helping to produce one of your favorite podcasts. Now let's take a dangerous dive deep into our eeeekmail bag and see what letters are creeping around in there for us. This first one comes from one of our Ghoul Gang members up in Northern California, and the subject line is, I am the walrus. Hello, Luce. I was driving home from Santa Cruz last week when I remembered a family gathering years ago that I wanted to share with you. First, a little background. My grandparents have traveled the world, and over the years, they've accumulated many pieces of art, books, and other ephemera. In a small corner of their house, there are extraordinary pieces from various Inuit artists of Alaska. There is one item that has fascinated me my entire life, a beautiful mask. My grandparents used to have an incredible home in Alamo, Northern California. Spring was gorgeous there. But my favorite time of year to visit was, of course, autumn. Their house was surrounded by trees, and it always felt warm. Plus, it featured a backyard that was visited by deer nearly every single day. It was a sanctuary, a place where I truly felt safe. One autumn evening, my mother took me and my younger brothers to my grandparents for an overnight visit. My aunt also came by. They were having one of those boring grown-up talks in the living room, and my brothers and I were sitting nearby on a hideous orange shag carpet, bored out of our minds. I have no idea when it happened, but at some point, I looked up and my grandfather wasn't there. I looked around for him when I saw someone standing outside. My mother, grandmother, and aunt started screaming. My grandfather was out there standing perfectly still, wearing a walrus mask. I started laughing hysterically. Was that enough for my grandfather? Absolutely not. Moments later, my brothers and I got in our pajamas and were headed for bed. As I walked towards the bed, I glanced out the window, and then it was my turn to scream. Once again, there was my grandfather standing perfectly still, wearing a walrus mask. Needless to say, he was all smiles at breakfast the next morning. I think about that night often, and I laugh every time. My grandparents live in Nevada now, and I visit them as often as I can. When I go to visit, I always stop and I look at the items they have collected over their years of travel. The one item that always makes me smile, of course, is that walrus mask my grandfather wore years ago. I miss visiting their home in California. I miss the warmth of that house, the voices of our family during the holidays, summer fun in the backyard, and the Halloween decorations on all of the houses on their old street. I'm attaching an image of the mask my grandfather wore and the information he gave me regarding where it came from. And then this part is from Andrew's grandfather. We bought the mask in 1983. It's attributed to the artist Aloysius Picongana, a King Island native. King Island is off the coast of Nome. And then Andrew signs it off. See you at Midsummer Scream. And I did see you at Midsummer Scream, Andrew, and it was quite a scream indeed. What a special weekend that was. Thank you so much for this incredible eek-mail. I love this mask, and if it's okay with you, I'm going to share it on the Instagram so that everybody can check it out. I tried to do a little digging on Aloysius, and if you Google his name, you will find several of his pieces. Many of them are available for auction, as he was quite a prolific carver, and he worked with wood and ivory, and then also was a major mask maker as well. And while Aloysius died just a few years after Andrew's grandparents bought this mask in 1986, his work lives on, and you can see many pictures of it on the internet, and I will post a few of those on our Instagram as well. Unfortunately, I did as much digging as I could, and I could not figure out much of a biography for Aloysius. So if anyone knows anything more about this Inuit artist, I would love to hear about it. I'm sure that our fellow lanterns would as well, because I know so many of you are fascinated by masks and the history of masks, something which I am currently researching and will be releasing an episode on this calendar Halloween season. That being said, it's always really exciting to learn about mask makers from other cultures and the ways in which masks have been used to express a variety of different emotions besides fear. When I look at this walrus mask, the picture that you sent me, Andrew, it's not a particularly scary mask. It's actually fairly cute. But the idea of someone wearing it standing perfectly still outside in the middle of the night, outside of your bedroom window or your living room window, quite scary indeed. So kudos to your grandfather, a deliciously wicked sense of humor. And this letter just filled me with so much glee and reminded me of my beloved grandparents who lived in Cincinnati while they were alive and whom I spent many memorable holidays with as well. So thank you, Andrew, for taking the time to share this warm, cozy, and hilarious memory with us. I'm sure the lanterns were cackling along with me, and I can't wait to hear from you again soon. Now we appear to be receiving a call from the Midwest.
Hi, Lucy. This is Michelle from Roundtree. It's been a while since I've called in. I just wanted to share some fun news since we just haven't had good news this past week, especially for women in this country, but I digress. I was in Kansas City a few weeks ago. I am from Missouri, and I'm in Springfield, which is about 3 hours from Kansas City, give or take. And I went out to have brunch with one of my friends. And as I was going up to the counter, I noticed the girl had a necklace that had a jack-o'-lantern on it. And I looked at her and I said, I love your necklace. And she turned her head to me, looked directly in my eye and said, it's always Halloween. And I gasped and screamed and I said, do you listen to the podcast? Are you a lantern? And she goes, I do. And I am. And I just got so excited. So she hears this. I just wanted her to know how excited I was to see a fellow lantern. So I just wanted to remind everyone, even though it's a dark time, we do have little lanterns shining their light out there. I want to call back later or maybe write an eeeekmail letting you know how my Halloween went here too, but that is for another time. I just wanted to share that with you today to maybe brighten your spirits and everybody else's spirits. We're all out there. Bye.
Michelle, I am obsessed. Thank you so much for calling in and telling us this lovely story. And to the lantern in Kansas City, please call back and tell us your side of the story. And hopefully we can make a connection. And if neither of you are signed up for our local Lantern Society, make sure you do so because this is the kinds of connections we want to be making. Our local Lantern Society, for those of you who are new to the podcast, is totally free and it's kind of like a listener directory. There is a link on our show notes and one on our Instagram as well to a short Google form where you just fill out as much contact information as you want to, and then Grimturn Nathan and I are breaking everybody up into regions and then creating little contact lists within those regions so that you can have a fun group of people to go do Halloweeny stuff with all year round, people that you know are like-minded and people you know you'll have at least one thing in common with, which is that you both love the podcast. So check out our local Lantern Society links in the show notes, and we do have pins made for Southern California lanterns and Northern California lanterns, our first two societies, Society 101 and Society 102. So if you were not at Midsummer Scream and didn't get to pick up your pins there, reach out and we will be sending you your pins. And as we group these other locations, these other regions, we will be making pins for every region and sending those out to you so you can wear them on your jacket and hopefully spot lanterns in the wild, even if they're not wearing a jack-o'-lantern necklace, which, Michelle, good for you for saying something. You know, I think sometimes it's easy to feel awkward even if you admire something that someone else is wearing. You maybe don't want to interrupt what they're doing, or, you know, sometimes there's a little voice in your head going like, is this going to be weird if I just reach up to the stranger and start talking to them? But when it has to do with something that you have in common and you have a compliment to share, it's never weird. It always feels good to receive a genuine compliment or to be greeted with passion and excitement from someone that you have something in common with. So don't overthink it. If you see somebody wearing something that's like Halloweeny or just your style at all, throw them a compliment. If it is Halloweeny, ask them about the podcast. And then if they don't listen, you can recruit them. New lanterns, new lanterns, new lanterns. Good for you, Michelle, for reaching out to someone new. I'm not sure if that is stepping outside your comfort zone or not. But regardless, I think you should be applauded for just stepping outside yourself for a moment and bonding with a person over Halloween in the summer, in the middle of the summer. Those are our people out there wearing jack-o'-lantern necklaces when it's like 100 degrees outside. Those are lanterns, whether they know it or not. This call just made my day, my week, my year. Thank you for sharing, and please definitely call back or write in and tell us how your first Halloween in Roundtree went. For those of you who are not familiar with Michelle, she moved into a neighborhood in Missouri that is famous for how they celebrate Halloween. She called last year to tell us a little bit about her excitement over it, so you'll have to go back and listen to that episode. And we eagerly anticipate hearing all about how your first Halloween in your new house was. Thanks, Michelle. My new motto definitely is, we're all out there. All right. Our next eeeekmail has the subject line, eeeekmail. Very appropriate. Hello, Lanterns. I am so excited to share my Halloween story. I grew up in a highly controlled evangelical Christian home. When I was very little, I did celebrate Halloween, but that all ended once my dad decided that Halloween was Satan's holiday. So instead of costumes, we wore our regular clothes to church basement harvest festivals. And instead of candy, we got speeches about how demons would infect us if we even acknowledged Halloween. So even through my young adulthood, I didn't celebrate. I was so scared of my dad that I simply acted like Halloween didn't exist. Fast forward to meeting my husband, fellow Ghoul Gang member Josie Costa. He's a Halloween fanatic. So when I told him why I didn't celebrate, he was so kind and understanding. He encouraged me to discover the roots of Halloween and try to think independently. With the help of his love and knowledge of Halloween's rich history, I was able to break free of my dad and rediscover Halloween without guilt. Now my husband and I have been married for 12 years, and we make the best of every October. Halloween is a month-long event for us, and thanks to your podcast, we're making a point to celebrate the joy of Halloween throughout the year. Halloween to me is freedom, creativity, and acceptance. I've dressed as skeletons and witches, I've danced in Salem, Massachusetts, and I've read every Halloween comic book I can get my hands on. You should definitely read Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell. I hope that everyone who was told as a kid that they couldn't celebrate Halloween has a chance to hear this show and embrace this incredible holiday. Forever spooky, Madeline Sedai, or Sedai. Please correct me on my pronunciation. Madeline, this eeeekmail was so beautiful. It made me tear up multiple times, and I had to keep stopping the recording and going back and rereading it. This is a really beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. And I know for a fact that we have a lot of listeners who were in your same shoes growing up. And I really love hearing these stories about people who were able to discover and fall in love with Halloween as adults. And this is why I like to push back against the idea that loving Halloween as an adult is purely a nostalgia trip, because simply we didn't have the same childhoods. Regardless of who had access to Halloween and what kind of Halloween they were able to celebrate, I think as we're adults, we hopefully have a lot more control in our lives and the ability to celebrate holidays the way that makes sense for us, especially as we're building our own families and we're building our own communities. It's very important to be able to create your own traditions outside of those that you were brought up with. Even if the ones you were brought up with were good and you want to keep them, you also need to build your own. And as we've talked about many times on this podcast, traditions are very rich with fascinating cultural and historic roots, and celebrating them is not merely something that's for children, but it's something that connects us to our past, to our present, and to our communities. So I'm so happy that you met your wonderful husband and that you two found the podcast. Thank you so much for the support, by the way. It's great having you two as Ghoul Gang members. And I just think it's lovely that he was able to help you discover your love for the holiday, and that now it's something that's an important part of your relationship. It's extremely romantic. I know so many of our listeners, this is something that you share with your significant others, and I love it. I think it's so beautiful. I'm actually looking at a picture right now on my wall of me and Isaac on Halloween a few years ago at this concert where they had a big Halloween photo op. And this was 1 year into our relationship. And I remember bringing up Halloween before we moved in together and saying what a big deal it was for me and how he had to get on board with it. And he was like, of course, I love Halloween too. And after the first Halloween that we celebrated while living together, I was packing up my Halloween decorations, and he was like, you should leave some of these up. These look great. We should keep these up all year round. And yeah, that's when I knew it was forever. Halloween romance is really important. I saw a tweet the other day that said, I want to go on a date where we drive around to look at houses decorated for Halloween and then carve pumpkins while watching scary movies. And that was from an account at Let's Get Spooked. And it made me think, hey, should I start an It's Always Halloween dating service? Maybe that could be a offshoot of the local Lantern Society. And Madeline, thank you for that recommendation of pumpkin heads. I have heard from a few other lanterns that also love this graphic novel. And I was thinking it might be fun to read next year for our book club in July, because I just learned that July is graphic novel celebration month. So what could be more fun than reading a Halloween graphic novel to celebrate? Here's to your happy Halloween adulthood, Madeline. I'm so happy that you have come to this point where you're exploring your life for yourself and adopting the traditions that make you and your partner happy, and that you're a part of our ghoul gang and our lovely porch full of lanterns glowing brightly into the night, shining a path for all of those who also need a little extra community and support. I would love to hear from any other lanterns who also got into Halloween as adults. Feel free to give us a call, 802-532-DEAD, or write us that email at itsalwayshalloweenpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, the hotline is open to anyone who wants to share any Halloween memories or recommendations, or any of your celebratory ideas that you have for calendar Halloween. As I said at the top of the episode, if you love It's Always Halloween, please subscribe at patreon.com/itsalwayshalloween, or you can even make a one-time donation using our tip jar. You can also support the podcast by buying It's Always Halloween merch on Redbubble. That link is in our show notes along with our Instagram. You can follow us there at It's Always Halloween Podcast as well. This episode of It's Always Halloween was performed by me, Luce Tomlin-Brenner, with help from your fellow lanterns, including Andrew, Michelle, and Madeline. Thanks for your wonderful contributions. The editing, theme music, and sound design is by Pete Burns. Thanks, Pete. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at LTBcomedy and Pete at Mittenberries. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe there and write us a little review so that other like-minded ghouls can find us. Here's one from A. Malamut that says, "Finally, research." Luce is the commiserate professional, and she always brings so much hard work and research to her episodes. I love this show. Oh, so sweet and so supportive. Thank you for that lovely review. You can write something that simple, anything to kind of drown out some of the white supremacists that we occasionally have writing into the show, leaving one-star reviews, who don't always appreciate the deep dive into history that tends to expose the ways in which colonialism has not been great for Halloween. If you listen on Spotify, give us 5 stars there. And we're also streaming on the NPR One app. So subscribe there and just tell Ira Glass that you love us. Thanks so much for listening to It's Always Halloween, and come back next time. Unless the walrus grabs you and drags you into an icy grave.